Today we are going to study Judas, Judas Iscariot, and I don't know if we'll be able to finish everything in an hour. There's a lot of content on Judas, a very, very interesting figure and character in the scriptures and in history. But as you know, we're doing the 12 apostles, and we started with the significance of the number 12. And obviously there's a picture of the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember, there's 13 tribes, but again, there's something symbolic about the number 12, even in the Old Testament. And from the 12 tribes, you have the 12 disciples. Remember, there's more than 12 disciples. Luke says 70. But again, he had 12. And then you have the 12 foundations, and that's in the book of Revelation, chapter 21. And and then we started with naming one apostle at a time, and we started with Peter, and then we did James, and we did John, and now we are going to do Judas Iscariot, and he is an apostle. He is an apostle. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you hear about Judas, what comes to mind?
Betrayal,
right? I think that's everyone's, like, his name is synonymous with, like, betrayal, pretty much. If you have a friend group, if you're in a job, if you're in a team, and there is a traitor, if someone's going to betray you, the nickname they'll give that person instantaneously is Judas. Even though we have Brutus before that, who essentially gave up Julius Caesar in 44 BC, but again, the name Judas kind of overrided Brutus and in Caspius. But so you have a man, Judas, who walked with Christ intimately for 3 years, and at the very end just gave him up for 30 pieces of silver, and we all know that's not a lot, even in their standards. But Judas, as far as his origins go, Judas Iscariot. Judas essentially means to be praised. Okay, praised. Judas. And Iscariot is there is a dispute as far as there are two major theories about Iscariot, and they do have both of them have significant meaning to them. But the first, as far as where we get Judas Iscariot, is that he is the first one. This is a more likely interpretation, that he's a man of the Kerath. At Kerath, if you look at the photos that I sent you guys, it's south of Jerusalem. Okay, and Is means man, so man of Kerath. So Judas, man of Kerath, Iscariot, essentially. And if this is accurate, okay, and most Bible interpreters take this position, that it's Judas, man of Kerath, so he's south of Jerusalem, then that means out of all the 12, apostles, that he is all of them are from the same area. And notice that even in that map, I put up north, is that everyone else is from Galilee or Capernaum, around the Sea of Galilee. So they're from the northern part. And he is the only one from the southern part. Okay? So it's a very interesting. So Peter, James, John, all of them, they're all from the Galilee and Capernaum, Bethsaida area. Okay, so that's the first. So Iscariot meaning man of Kerath. Or, and this is also interesting, and some people take this interpretation just based upon his actions, but that he is part of the Sicarii. Okay, now if you don't, he's associated with the Sicarii. Now, if you don't know what the Sicarii is, the Sicarii is a group that was established in the first century in Jerusalem, and it is, the name Sicarii comes from the word Sika, which means dagger. And I also sent you guys photos of that too, as far as the way they functioned. And they were historically the first ever assassination group. Okay, So remember, whenever there was assassins would always be the minority in the midst of a giant empire. Okay, so in history, they were the first group that were known as the assassins, and they were also in affiliation with the zealots. There were many Jewish tribes at the time, but you have the zealots, and then you have the Sicarii, and the Sicarii. It's also mentioned in the Bible too. Paul was accused of being part of the Sicarii in Acts 21:38. I don't expect a lot of people to know that, where he says, "Are you not the Egyptian who recently stirred up a revolt and led 4,000 men of the Sicarii, assassins, out of the wilderness?" So again, it was a small sect, but historically significant. Okay, so if you look at the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, remember that started in 66 AD. And it started with the Sicarii tribe, these group of assassins. And what they did was that they wanted pure Jewish independence from the Romans. Okay, and what they would do is that they had these small little daggers. It'd be very sharp, and just very stealth, would go up to anyone that was a Roman collaborator, that was Jewish. They would kill their own. They would kill the high priests. They would kill merchants. That anyone that was Jewish that was a collaborator with the Roman Empire, they would kill them. Okay, and they would in stealth in public kill them, and obviously throw the knife to the floor and scream as a bluff. Oh no, he's dead. Where'd he go? And all of a sudden he would run away. Okay, that was the first concept of the assassins. And then, the concept of assassinate evolved through time. And, the word that we have, Hashashina, which is in Islam, it's 11th, 12th, 13th century group from the Shiites. So, the Sunnis, they're 90% of Islam today. Shiites, they're from Iran, Persia, and essentially there was a group called the Hashashina, and they started another group called the Assassins, where they would train in the mountains too. And that's where we get the word assassin, right? Hashashina, assassin. And we know of the ninjas in Japan. So these were assassin groups. But again, the Sicarii was like the first ever group known as the Assassins. And if you know through history, I also sent you that photo of the Masada. And I actually took those photos too, which was Herod the Great. He built his place on top of that, which is south of Israel. And if you don't know, after 70 AD, a group of 1,000 Jews, and when I was there, you're told they were Jews, but they were really the Sicarii tribe, and 1,000 of them went on there. They stayed there, and then under the Emperor Vespasian, this is in 73 AD, they had 15,000 Roman soldiers, pretty much build them out to kill them. And right before they came up, what these Jews did, or these Sicarii did, they lit themselves on fire. And 960 of them died, and I think like 5 women and children, or 7 children, were able to report. And Josephus reports this. But the reason why I say this is because this was not just Jews; it was the Sicarii. And today, if you're part of the IDF, okay, the Israeli Defense Force, is that you have to go up there. And I went up there, and you have to, and this is where you swear your allegiance to Israel. Okay, so I just throw that out there because, again, like, there's a lot of talk about assassinations in Israel, and like, again, historically, you trace them all the way back, and they go to the Sicarii. Okay, so some people will take Judas and say, this is what he was that he had a political agenda with Jesus, which is why he gave him up, right? But again, these are the two major interpretations: man of Kerath, or the Sicarii. Okay, regardless, Judas was not, like, if he's part of the Sicarii tribe or if he's from Kerath. What does that imply? Is that there was a cultural distinctive between him and the disciples. Okay, that's something that, again, you can't really see in the text, But just when you analyze the history of it, you put two and two together, you say, yeah, there's definitely a cultural distinctive. So a question is that did Judas's cultural difference, what was it, is there a factor with Judas's cultural distinctive compared to the other 11 disciples?
Wait, what was the question?
The question was, he is from Keroth, okay, the south, or he's from the Iscariot. But him, being from one of the two, okay, if he were to merge with 11 Galileans and there's 12 disciples, would there not be a cultural distinction between the two, between all of them? Right? My suggestion is yes. I think there was a cultural distinctive between Judas Iscariot. And I'm not saying this led up to the assassin or him betraying Christ, but I think there was just a cultural difference, just geographical, and to me when I hear about that, it's like one Texan with like 11 New Yorkers. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's going to be a cultural distinction. Ironically, when I was at Baylor, like everyone was from Texas but me. I was the only Californian. It's weird I'm saying Californian, but yeah, I was the only one from California, and we all went to New York for a week, and it was all of their first time, and I've been to New York many times, and I spent the week with them, and you could just see the cultural difference between the Texans and the New Yorkers. Like, just some guys are more polite, guys from Texas, and the New Yorkers are just straight to it, But my point is, I think there's a cultural distinctive with Judas Iscariot and the 12, right? Not saying this is sinful or anything like that. It's just, cultural, at the end of the day, defines your personal normality, how you do things. This is how you wake up, this is how you eat, this is how you talk. Neither right nor wrong. It's just, again, there's going to be differences. Okay? Now, his calling, okay? Judas being called a disciple as far as his early discipleship. Let's read two passages here, okay? Can someone read Luke 6, and then we're going to go with just 3 verses, 13 to 16. Luke 6, 13 to 16. And can someone read Matthew 10, 1 to 4? Matthew 10, 1 to 4. So Luke 6, who wants to get that?
I will.
And then who wants to get Matthew 10, 1 to 4?
I'll get that one.
Okay. Let's start with
Okay,
Luke
so
6.
Luke 6, which verses? 6 to 9?
13 to 16.
Oh.
You're good.
Okay. And when day came, he called his disciples to him, and chose 12 of them, whom he also named as apostles: Simon, whom he also named Peter, and Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor.
Notice this, though. Whenever you see the lists of the apostles in the Gospels, it always ends off with Judas Iscariot and always says, who was the traitor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Notice how when Virginia read, there's more than one Judas, right? There's Judas, the son of James, okay? But obviously here we're talking about Judas Iscariot, okay? Matthew 10, Bonnie?
Yeah, I've got it. 1 through 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
He called his 12 disciples to him and gave him authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who is called, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon is a zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him.
Again, Judas Iscariot who betrayed him.
Oh, that's it. Number 4. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Was Judas corrupt? Okay. Or did he become corrupt? Was he corrupt from the very get-go? Or did he become corrupt? Now, I'm going to ask questions throughout this whole talk about Judas that I don't think we can dogmatically answer, but we can speculate. And I think there could be practical implications for us today as we ask questions. Kevin, you had a question?
What was the verse in Acts where it talked about Paul and the Egyptian?
Oh, it's Acts 21. Acts 21:38.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to read it.
Yeah. So it's the only, it's one about the Sicarii. Yeah. So another thing, it's, yeah. So question is that, was Judas Iscariot corrupt or did he become corrupt? Meaning that when he was part of the 12, was he already corrupt, okay? Or was, when he joined the 12, he was just a normal disciple. He wholeheartedly wanted to follow Christ, but in the process of the 3 years, a lot could happen in 3 days, a lot could happen in 3 months, a lot could happen in 3 years, right? So I remember, I have no dogmatic answer on these things. I'm just asking because I think they can have great implications. But again, was he corrupt or did he become corrupt?
I don't think he started corrupt. I think he became corrupt when he was tempted by the silver and he thought, oh, I can do so much good with that.
Yeah.
Now, see, I wondered if maybe he thought that if he brought it up that Jesus would, well, how would I say it? That he would have the angels come down and get him, and he would take control, and he would be in charge, and Judas would be a part of the power, because the money that Judas got was nothing, really.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't that much money at all.
By a slave,
and that's why he took it and threw it back at him and said, I don't want this money. It's and anyway, he felt so bad about it that he went out and killed himself afterwards. Because he felt so guilty, and because he thought that if he would just do that, show Jesus, and it would just end there, because Jesus would take charge and be in charge of what he needed to be in charge of at the time. But you don't know; it's hard to say. But the fact that he went out and killed himself after showed that he had tremendous regret and guilt over the whole thing. And he just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And he didn't want the money because it wasn't that much to it. He could have done without the money. But he was so mad, he went back and threw it back at him and told him he didn't want it. So, I don't know.
I mean, he was called, I mean, it's like if you're in the Savior of the world's inner, there's 12. So it's like, even if you make the 12, like that's a high, or it's a difficult circle to be a part of. So either he got there, I don't know. I mean, it's like God appointed him there. So it's like, even though he's like described as a traitor, the one who, betrayed him, I think he was already, I don't know. I mean, it's like he was called to be with Jesus.
Yeah,
so
remember, we're going to say, there's no dogmatic answers. We could speculate, but these questions are, good for us too. Like just the process of the soul, how you start off and how you end, so that's why, like, it's these are, the Bible doesn't say, the answer, but I think we could speculate, But I kind of was for me, when I read this, I think, look at chapter 10, verse 1. And he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every affliction. Now, when he says what in the names of the 12 apostles. Okay, so my point is, he was called by Christ. Like Judas, Jesus was the one that picked 12, and Judas was one of them. Okay, and not just that, but he was commissioned and he was empowered. So he was commissioned to preach the kingdom. Okay, he was called by Jesus. Okay, so don't think that I have a hard time, Jesus coming up and be like, hey, this guy's a bad heart, I'm going to pick him. I think there had to be some nobility within Judas. That, for us, remember, we have a tainted mind towards Judas because we define him by his end. His end is corruption, right? We don't define Abraham as a person that lack of faith. Well, because he died as a person with faith, So I think compare Genesis 12 to Genesis 22. Genesis 22 being the passage where Abraham, was called to sacrifice his son Isaac, but he didn't, and that defines him, as a man of faith. But then we don't see the lies and the lack of faith building up to it. So we kind of define people based upon like how they ended, or their climactic point for the good or for the bad in life. We just do that as humans. Let's be honest. But for us, we define Judas obviously the way he ended, right? But again, I think he was a good person or a noble person at start, right? And not only that, look, he cast out demons too, right? And he performed miracles. So this was the 12. Okay, so to me, it appears that I think Judas started off good, and all of a sudden, like, there was a slow, progressive corruption within the 3 years that happened. Again, I can't be dogmatic about it, but again, just someone studying human nature and just like, why would Jesus pick someone like right away? Like, I think, again, he was called by Jesus for a specific reason. Okay, so I think God allows people to walk in spiritual roles, but their true heart's condition is eventually revealed. And it's how your heart, what's inside of here, will come out is through time and opportunity. Time and opportunity have that ability to expose what's in here, for the better or for the worse. Okay, so you see the normal kid who starts off in youth group, and he's a great conservative kid, and all of a sudden he goes to college, and guess what happens? He goes wild, and then they'll say, man, what happened to Jimmy? He was such a good boy. At the end of the day, he didn't have that access. He didn't have that freedom, you see, because we are good at again, playing roles, right? Or for someone that there was some way, and all of a sudden they got rich and famous, and all of a sudden they change for the worse. It's safe to conclude that was a seed that was persistent in their heart. It's just the environment didn't really produce that. So I'm a very big proponent as far as time and exposure experiences really gut out what's in here with inside people, right? And they'll change for the better, for the worse with one of those two. So I think Judas started off just fine, but all of a sudden I think there was some parts inside of him that he did not put to death, right? He did not put to death, and that all of a sudden won at the end of the day. Okay, so now, so this is how Judas was called. Okay, now let's look at that's his earlier ministry. Okay, this is the way he starts off. What about his middle ministry? Okay, he was entrusted. Okay, and he had a big responsibility as far as the 12, and he was responsible for the money bag, finance. Okay. So, and again, this is kind of why I'm like, I think he did start off good, and I think that Jesus did trust him, because you don't just trust anyone with money, because again, money, we know what the Bible says about that. But let's go to John chapter 12, and can someone read 1 to 8? John chapter 12, and let's read 1 to 8. John 12, 1 to 8.
6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus has raised from the dead. Here at dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with fragrance of the perfume. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It's worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and a keeper of the money bag. He used it to keep himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It is intended that she should save her perfume to the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. To what?
8.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So what did it say? That he was in charge of the money bag, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll read another one. Also, John 13:28 says, and we're going to read this passage later on, but I'll read it here. Since Judas had charge of the money bag, some thought, this is when he betrayed Christ, some thought that Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the feast or give something to the poor. Point of a reason why I quote both these passages is they both specify money bag, right? And it was given to him. So again, Judas had a lot of trust, and he didn't just have a lot of trust, he had a lot of trust with Christ and the apostles, the other disciples too. Right? Trust and leadership. Again, financial stewardship, it's a test of character and integrity. Whenever someone's in charge of money, in finance they call it the fiduciary principle, right? So, in investments, and he had a close position with Christ too in order for him to be in that position, right? So again, I say this because this was his responsibility. Okay, he was in charge of the finance, he was in charge of the money. Okay, now that passage that Bonnie read, so that's his role. Okay, that's just what he's supposed to be doing. Remember, there's what you're doing, but there's also something that's in your heart. And in verse 6, where he says, this he said, not because he cared about the poor, okay, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Okay, so again, this is where his heart is exposed. His heart is revealed. He masked his greed with righteousness. Okay, and a denarii, by the way, it says it was 300 denarii, right? So 1 denarii is 1 day's wage, so 300 days wage. So a conversion today, that perfume would have been $30,000. Okay, it's a lot of money for imagine you have like some perfume that's worth $30,000 and you just throw it on someone's feet and wash their hair with it. Okay, so Judas, and this also happened to the disciples too. They said something very similar to, like, man, you could have bought, and that's true. Let's be honest. Like you could have done a lot of good investments and something with that, with $30,000, but worth the perfume. But it's the way he projected himself. It's the way he disguised himself and says, oh, you could have given it to the poor. He didn't really care about the poor, right? The Bible says, again, he was a thief. He was in that state of greed. Okay, now what we can learn from this text is the slow erosion of integrity. Okay, so Judas being a thief, I don't believe. I think it evolved. I don't think he was a thief right away when Christ called him. I think he was a noble person, and I think he had things that he never died to. And there was a pattern of private compromise that Judas had that evolved into him being this greedy person that betrayed Christ. And this is the way sin works. I think, remember in our Proverbs series, we talked about greed. But again, the way sin works and the way the nature of addiction works, the beautiful passage is in James 1, 14, 15, that says, each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, gives forth death. Okay? So this passage, James 1:14, is a classic illustration of the progressive state of addiction. The evolvement of a person from A to B to C to D. Okay, not from A to D, but it's a progression. Okay? So notice when he says this person is lured. Okay? Lured in a state of desire. Okay, all of us experience things in life. You go through seasons, things happen to you for the good, some things happen for the worse, and it puts you in a state, an emotional state. You're locked into that state. And that state is not necessarily sin, what James says. Okay? Each person is tempted, and he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Doesn't say sin. Then desire, when is conceived, gives birth to sin. So there's a progression. So there's an emotional state someone's in. For instance, some can be in an emotional state of fear. Some can be in an emotional state of anxiety. Some can be in an emotional state of sorrow. Some can be in an emotional state of sloth. Some can be in an emotional state of lust. Some can be in an emotional state of greed. It's there. Okay? It's a state. And that state is due to how one is because of a situation that they're in. Okay? Now, that state is not necessarily sin. It's how one responds in that state that determines if it's sin or not. Is that fed? You see what I'm saying? What does the Bible say? Mark 3:5. Jesus, he was angry. He was angry at the Pharisees. He didn't sin. He was in that state. You see what I'm saying? He was in that state. It says he was anxious. He was in a state. Okay? If someone's in a state of what? Sorrow. Being sorrowful is not a sin. Okay? It's a state that you're in. The question is, how do you respond in the midst of that state? Okay? That either brings forth sin. Okay? In someone's life. And if someone stays in that state of sin, then ultimately what James says, that ultimately brings forth death. Okay? Whether in this life or eternal life. Okay? What he's suggesting. Okay? This here, it's a path of addiction. Every single one of us has experienced that state before. You're in a state. Okay? And it's how you respond in that which determines, will someone become an addict? Right? Because if you interact with anyone that's an addict, you don't just become an addict. You evolve into an addict. You were in a state, and that became an escapism due to your state. Sorrow. You were escaping something. You could never be honest about it. Okay? This is a lot of deconstruction of the human soul here. Okay? So, again, death, sin, the death of life, being a horrible, some of these people on the street, in Skid Row, and, when you see downtown, the way they are, they're disheveled. They didn't just become like that in one day. They evolved into that. Their soul allowed them to become, and they accepted it within their soul to become there. I'm a big proponent of human responsibility. Okay? It doesn't happen overnight. It evolves that way. Sooner or later, where is God, right? I want to use Samson as an illustration. In Judges 16:10, he says, and this is when he was with Delilah, okay? It says, and he says, the Philistines are up upon you, Delilah says. Samson, he woke up from his sleep and says, I will go out as to other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. He did not know that the Lord had left him. And this is the illustration I've given before, as far as a frog in hot water. You pour a frog in hot water, jumps out. You put a frog in boiling hot water, and you just boil it. It's not going to know. Next thing you know, it's dead. Okay? It's progressive. It happens very slowly. Okay? Again, sin doesn't just explode overnight. It accumulates. And I believe Judas, as far as his betrayal go, it happened very progressively, in secret, and it happened within his heart. And what was clear, that of all the emotional states, say the 7 deadly sins of Proverbs 7, is the sin of greed. That was really dominating his heart. Okay? And he masked it. Another thing, again, masking, I'm talking about, is the duality of human nature. And when I say the duality of human nature, is that this is all of us. We have what we're going on, and as far as the iceberg inside of our hearts, but then there's what people see, that little tip iceberg, and that's what we feed and that's what we project. We have a natural tendency to do that. Okay, so that's the appearance, and there's the iceberg underneath the water, and that's really you. Okay, the problem is people see the tip of the iceberg, but they don't see the iceberg underneath the water. Okay, and we all have this dual nature. All of us struggle with it. All of us have it. And are we able to be honest and say there's an alignment between the top of the iceberg or the bottom of the iceberg? It says, Jeremiah says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can trust it? Okay, when the Bible says in Jeremiah that's deceitful, it's deceitful to you. It's deceitful towards other people, but it's most deceitful towards you. Okay? People play themselves. People lie to themselves more than anything. You lied to me. Someone lies to another person. Well, we lie to ourselves most of the time. Right? We're victims to us. And this is why in James he says, a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways, double-minded. Okay, so there's a disconnect between the iceberg underneath and the iceberg on top. How you project yourself versus how you really are. Okay, again, the dual nature of man. This was Judas, clearly in this passage in John 12, right? He's greedy inside, right? He's looking at that money, the $30,000. But how he projects himself is, oh man, I care about the poor. I'm like Mother Teresa, right? That's his projection. All right. But at the end of the day, the person you deceive the most is ourselves. I think sometimes in our own lies, I think there's a possibility you could start off by knowing you're lying, right? You might start off knowing you're lying, and then you get so into it that you stop believing that lie, and you really believe that. You truly believe your own lies. I think there's that film, Big Fish. Have you guys seen that film, Big Fish? No?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember the whole thing was this old man talking about his life. And, there was the twins and the giants and all this. And at the end of the movie, it's his funeral. And everyone's there, but they weren't as big as he projected them to be. They were exaggerations. You see? And he started to believe his own lies. Right? We all do that, is what I'm saying. And again, being caught in that state. Okay? So again, it's possible, and I don't know this. This is what's good to ask these things to apply to us too. Did Judas really believe that he was a compassionate, mercy fighter for the poor? Did he believe his own lie, his external lie that he projected? I think a lot of us do sometimes. We believe what we project, right? So, any questions?
Well, I mean, the thing is God put on humanity, with Jesus. So God already knew these guys like before they knew themselves. So it's like he knew all the faults of the disciples before he called them. So it's like all of them played into God's hands and executed his will. So it's like, even though he betrayed you, it's like you probably do, it sounds like the worst thing you could do, like, oh, you betrayed Jesus, you know? But it's like, he did, but it was going to happen for God's salvation plan to, you know, to happen. So it's like, all things are in God's hands. So it's like, yeah, it's bad. And, you know, the manifestation of his sin, like, caused him to fully die. But I feel like God still used all of the faults of the disciples and turned it into his glorious kingdom. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if like Judas is like included in the New Jerusalem, like on the walls or whatever. Like, I don't know how it all works, but it's like he used all of our faults in some way for good. Or I don't know. I just feel like God still used it.
Yeah.
Even though it's like you don't want to betray the one who loves you the best and the most, and I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. That's a fun question. Was Judas saved?
Is it? I don't know. It's like we always put our human spin on it. It's like, oh, it's like everyone kind of like loosely agrees, like, oh, Judas, oh, he's the one who betrayed Jesus. I mean, it says it in the scripture, you know. It's like, but it's like we all have a reputation, you know, and you know, it may be good or it may be bad, but it's like, is that beyond being saved?
Yeah.
You know, is what Judas did is it unforgivable? No, I don't think it is. Like, Jesus forgave everyone. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. He knew that all of the disciples didn't know what they were doing. That's why he called them to his side, called them to lead them. So it's like, I just think that man likes to reason and push their weight around with like their idea of something, but it's like, if God was already saying that, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. It's like, it kind of, if you just use that as a general rule, it's like, we all don't know what we're doing, but he still like redeems us, purchases us, and, you know, completes us. And I don't know, it just seems like, if you look at it through God's eyes, it just seems like, you know, he was still saved.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm not God, so I don't know.
I think we get really, we have to, like, I know it's the same thing, but I mean, like, I have to realign my processing, my language to what the scriptures actually say. We talk about being saved a lot, you know, and we obviously mean being saved from ourselves, being saved from damnation itself. And that's really what we're talking about. It's avoiding hell, you know. That's what brings me to the fear of the Lord. Like, it's that Judas's fate was not something that even God intervened to change.
Yeah.
And that terrifies me. And I don't, you know, because any one of us left alone without intervention from God, like, truly being saved, could become it, if the conditions are right. And also, it drives me actually back towards forgiveness, and forgiveness for my ex-wife, forgiveness for my betrayals against me, because, you know, each of them were up to me. I don't want these people that I don't know. You know, no matter even what they've done to me here, like in the scope of eternity. If I have a mature answer, forgiveness is the only way for the Christian. And I don't know, something that drives me to that. And it also really drives me to my knees regarding the fear of the Lord. You know, that he's the author and finisher of faith, and he's also the author and finisher of damnation.
But Jesus knew what he was going to do. In fact, he even told him to go and do it.
Yeah, he did. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he knew exactly what was going to happen. In fact, he set it up that way, it looked like.
And for me, have mercy on my.
And didn't Isaiah say in Isaiah 53 that he was going to be betrayed?
Yeah, we'll get into the prophecies later on. Yeah, like there are multiple prophecies of Judas in the Old Testament. So this was prophesied about, like, very clearly in the Old Testament, like about someone betraying Jesus. Yeah.
Like, I think you are, obviously you're supposed to fear the Lord, you know, it's like the fear of the Lord is clean and enduring forever. Like, it keeps on, you know, you can't go through scripture without seeing the fear of the Lord, but also, like, you're supposed to fear the Lord, but it's the Lord that they were walking with, you know? So it's like they were by his side, like they got to, like, see him eat and breathe and perform miracles. So it's like, you have a healthy fear of the Lord, but you also want to be like John and rest in his side, and, you know, he's our refuge, he's our rest. So it's kind of like, it's both things. Like, he's our sanctuary. So it's like, yeah, we fear him, but it's like we take refuge in him too. So I think it's like, you know, and there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So it's just like, yeah, we're supposed to fear him, but also, like, we're supposed to take refuge in him. So I'm sure at some point, like, Judas, you know, there had to have been a moment where it's like he's, you know, if you're walking with the Son of God, like, there's no way you could be called to him and not have had a moment where like, Jesus, you know, I don't know. It's like there had to be a special moment for him other than just, like, the end story, you know?
I'm trying to wrap my mind around, because, like, you know, when we read the Gospels, like, you know, there's all these miracles, and, like, there were way more miracles than happened in reality than that were written down. You know what I mean? And not just that. Imagine being an eyewitness to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, being an eyewitness to some guy just really, like, you know, the miracles and the wonders and the character and, like, the wisdom from this one guy, and the mindset to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. It's not a lot of money, by the way. You know, I don't know. It kind of baffles me, I guess.
But the thing is like, the reality is this, like you were talking about in James, where it talked about, like, you know, lured away, and it's like the completion of your sin is death, right? But it's, if you're an addict, if you're a fentanyl addict and someone offers you, like, a microdose of fentanyl, then you're going to take it. Like, even, it may not be, like, the biggest thing, but if someone offers you something like it, they're going to take it, you know? So it didn't have to be, like, 30 million pieces of silver. It didn't have to, it just had enough to tickle the ear, tickle the whistle or whatever, you know? It's like, and that's what happens with all sin. You know, it's like, you know, if you're a glutton, if you give them, like, a half a sandwich, you know, it's like, they're going to take it. Like, so it just makes sense that it wouldn't be a lot, because it just shows that the heart, if it's already, like, in a state of, like, addiction, it's like, it doesn't take a lot. That's why they say, like, oh, you don't drink anymore, because if you just have a little taste, and, oh, you're back on it, you know? It's like, that's what makes sense to me, as someone that has seen addiction and, you know, experienced it in some ways. So it's just like, to me, it's just it's like, just imagine something that you like a little in your life and someone tempting you with like that. It's like, I could relate to, because wasn't it someone like by Jacob, they traded their birthright for the soup or something?
His brother, yeah.
So it's like the same thing.
It's a very, like, I you know, that James 1 passage, I think like our hearts obviously deals with different things, right? Context, right? But I think greed, what like wealth was what did it for Judas, and it controlled his heart. And I think when it becomes to that addictive point, whatever that addiction, if it's fed, all else becomes secondary to those desires, right? So to someone that, if it's a substance, all else becomes secondary to the drug addict's desires. So they'll take money, a lot of money, and squander it. They'll take really personal relationships and squander it, right? Because all else becomes what? Secondary, even for a little, right? And I think that's the essence of addiction. And I think for Judas, all it took was what? It was a little 30 pieces of silver. But I think it hit that addictive point for him, right? Where it consumed him. So, Matthew 26:14-15. 16 says, Judas agrees to betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Zechariah 1, this is the prophecy, 11, and we'll read it another time probably, 11:12-13. It's prophesied that he'll be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, and throwing the silver to the potter. Okay, so 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay, the love of money, not money, but the love of it. And I think that love was the consumption that really gripped Judas's heart. You ever notice if he was in charge of the money bag, why didn't Jesus ask Matthew to be in charge? Because he was a tax collector, former tax collector, right?
I kind of like have to approach this from different aspects too. Like, if God is going to, he just leaves you to your own sin if he doesn't show you love. Like, otherwise, he's going to confront love. He just puts, he left Judas to his own sin for free. Maybe Matthew didn't struggle to free. Maybe it's just, that's probably why he was appointed as a tax collector by the accountants, because he'd be very accounting minded.
Yeah.
He didn't just put at it. That's the way I look at it. But I don't know. Maybe, it drives me. And I understand what you're saying, Kevin. I'm not trying to emphasize it. You run around anxiety and fear of God, but it's a reverence to your core. That's what I'm trying to say. But not that anybody listening does not have that. I'm simply saying it. That's what. And Jesus says that about himself. Say, fear those who can destroy the body and the soul in hell. Yeah. That's basically what he's advertising there. It's like, hey, look, I'm going to have power in this world and in that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's one of those things that drives me to the point where you just kind of let Judas go and do what he does quickly. It should drive us to our knees to eliminate sin in our lives till we deal with it.
And you could just see we'll probably study this another time, but like the torment within Judas's soul. Like, you were talking about Romans 1, like that, what the human heart that rejects God, the evolution or devolvement essentially that happens in a person's heart after that, and you kind of see that in Judas's life. Like, he just had no control of himself in this area, right? So it seems like Matthew left money to follow Jesus. Judas followed Jesus to get close to money, right? Again, it's your heart that determines your integrity, essentially. John Chrysostom, he is a church father, and the fourth and fifth century. It says, "Speak on the love of money in Judas," and he says, "O madness, the covetousness of Judas altogether blinds him." He's blinded. He had often seen Jesus when he went through the midst of crowds and was unharmed, but all this profited nothing. Okay? So again, the blinding of what you see before you. I think this is the essence of an addicted, like, again, a heart that's really set on something. Is all else becomes secondary. The things that are most important to you, that should be most important to you, they become secondary. You can throw away money, like again, Judas was for money. Imagine someone that's addicted to a substance; they'll throw away money in an instant just for that substance. Kind of what you were saying, Kevin, right? Even if it's just for a little, right?
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, it's like. If Zechariah prophesied, the betrayal and the 30 pieces of silver, it's like, let's say he didn't do it and he, didn't take the bribe or something. It's like somebody else would have done it, like, because the prophecy would have been fulfilled. If it wasn't through him, it would have been through someone else. I don't know. It's just kind of like, if there's a prophecy on your life, like, it's just kind of, it's a scary, it's like, you don't want to be that person.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We'll probably have to talk about it next week because I'm only halfway through the notes and we're coming up on the hour. But, next week we can talk about the nature of these prophecies, but are they predetermined or was it a foreseen? And was Judas Iscariot, predetermined by God? And again, if he was, is there any moral accountability that we should throw towards him? A very valid question, but you're right. It's the nature of prophecies, right? And I think for us practically, it's like you just got to manage your heart well, right? You got to manage your heart well. So. Any other observations from this?
I don't know. It's kind of like Peter was saying. It's just sad. Like, because I feel like so many people are in that position where it's like you're so close to Jesus, but it's like you're so far. Because something else is on the throne of your heart.
Yeah.
I think the church is full of them, Kevin. That's an exaggeration. I think there are a lot of people, possibly in churches, that are like that.
Yeah.
Did Lazarus have a family, or was he by himself?
We don't know. You mean Judas?
Okay.
Judas?
I'm sorry, Judas, of course.
Yeah, we.
That was perfect.
No, it's okay. We don't know. We don't know if he had children or not, or a family. But yeah, we don't. But back to what you were saying, Peter. The essence of a scandal, right? The essence of a scandal is kind of what I'm saying. The dual nature of man, exposure. Right. So yeah, this is very prominent in our time, but I think we'll probably end it off here because I'm only halfway done, guys. We're going to talk about the betrayal of Jesus and look through the plot, the betrayal, and the betrayal, the Last Supper, demon possession in Judas was that a big factor. The prophecies of Judas in the Old Testament, Psalms and Zechariah. And the death of Judas, it's controversial because there's two different counts and contradictory, some people say. And yes, and the overview of the Gospel of Judas. So I want to talk to you guys about. There's another account that happened in the 2nd century that it was about the Gospel. I actually sent you guys the Gospel of Judas. You're more than welcome to read. You can read it in one sitting. But the validity of that history. But it was It was found in Cairo, Egypt, 3rd, 4th century document, and it was essentially 130 AD, very early, and it was released to the public in 2006. I remember that, and there was a lot of controversy, and atheists and the new atheists and Richard Dawkins and all, they were all going all over this. But anyways, I think we'll end here because we're at the hour, but I want to say this, is you could be in physical proximity to Jesus. You can be in physical proximity to the things of God. Hebrews talks about this. To Christians, you can be raised in a Christian environment and be around the best and have everything well. But again, that's great, but it's really, it all determines on the nature of your heart and the level of personal submission that only comes through. Only you can do that. Right, your personal submission to God, to Christ. When I say submission, is are you able to submit in those emotional states? Are you able to put that to death? Was Judas able to surrender that greed? Right, because at the end of the day, you're choosing you. You're choosing you before Christ. Right. So again, there's physical proximity, or there's proximity to the things of God. But again, it's more about the condition of your heart as far as how you surrender it. Okay? So